Hey guys, it's me Chan Dragon, and as usual, this is 3.6. I will come into Who Should You Pull edition in 3.6. It is between Nilou, Nahida, Baizhu, or Ganyu. As usual, don't treat this like very literally, you don't have to follow this, but take this as a reference or consideration when you're about to pull those character or you're kinda confused though. And let's get started. So the first character, let's talk first about the Archon of Sumeru, which is Nahida. I will talk about the good about her is that first, she is the best Dendro character currently until 3.6 though. Just because, yeah, obvious, she's Archon, because her application is very good. She is just like the marking is like help you to even though the enemy go to Narnia or whatever it is. As long you can hit that 3 karma, it will still deal damage. So which is actually very crazy. So basically, in terms of everything, Nahida is just very good, especially in the off-field capability like sub DPS and stuff. And second is she has the longest and the best Dendro applicator. Yeah, just I already mentioned before that the skill lasts very long. Once it's marked, damage over time from 3 karma is actually pretty insane. That we can say that if you keep trigger, it actually deal a lot of high damage though. So because of that, it's considered the best applicator for Dendro and the longest one. And third one is a EM buffer because we know when we use the burst, Nahida will buff the party members EM by 250, which is pretty good though. And also, she provides the huge upgrade for certain character. Until right now, there's at least two noticeable character that Nahida really kinda make it a lot better. Which is first one is Sino. Actually, Nahida with Sino actually feels a lot better. And second one is Nilou, just because she's just make it Nilou entire kit just complete and makes Nilou very good in that. And then the next one is auto pick fruits and plant in the overworld. So you know that if you use skill and then you kind of mark the plant, it will just auto pick. So let's say like kind of a violet grass you need to climb anymore. That's literally help you in terms of exploration. So that's pretty good, nice addition. And also fits in almost every Dendro team. I don't think Nahida cannot fit in any Dendro team. I think she can fit almost everything. At the worst, you can expect like only decent, just fine, but not so great. But at least it's decent. And at the best, of course, that become perfect. So she basically can match in any Dendro team, at least for right now. And then the next one is easy and diverse build. Yeah, I already mentioned that Nahida has like couple builds like you can mix like crit build, EM build, or even half of half. A lot of stuff that you can do with Nahida. So it's kind of make her that you can do a lot with her. And the last one, of course, she is meta character. Now we talked a bit about Nahida. The first, she's not really good in certain situation or stage or mode, especially in kind of multi waves, because we know that Nahida elemental skill that once you mark and if the enemy died, then it will not pass to the next enemy. So whenever it's start the new stage or the new wave, you have to mark again. So especially for certain team like Sino, that's actually kind of not very convenient, especially kind of last spiral abyss that involves like multi-wave in like rain guard. That's actually a little bit convenient with not using Nahida though. And the second is that it's not really a big deal, but I think some of mobile player will find it's a little bit annoying just because the skill require you to aim, and I know in mobile aiming it's a little bit kind of comfortable or not really convenient. So yeah, the next one is we move into the consideration why you should pull for Nahida. First, if you're aiming for the best Dendro applicator, or you just like feel what is your Dendro character like the best one right now, then yeah, go for Nahida. Nahida is the best for Dendro unit for the applicator, pretty much covered and everything. 3 karma insane buff in EM, so yeah, she is currently the best one in terms of Dendro character. And second is that if you need a very solid off-field kind of DPS or sub DPS type character, then yeah, pull for Nahida, just because her 3 karma can do like damage over time is pretty insane. So as a off-field DPS, she's very good. And third one, if you fans on Dendro reaction, you really like kind of maybe Hyper Bloom, Bargain, or a Bloom, or whatever aggravate spread, then she is a very good candidate for you to consider to pull for. And fourth point is that I really recommend for the player that still struggle in the spiral abyss, like you still haven't like finished 12-4 or you not even 36 star, or even like new player to pull for Nahida, just because if if you kind of concerned about like end game like Spiral Abyss, Nahida will make everything easier. Especially like recently in Spiral Abyss, whatever that related with Dendro, it's give you huge advantage that makes like Nahida as the best Dendro unit will make everything very quite easy though to carry you though. So if you kind of still struggle Spiral Abyss, I really recommend for you to pull for Nahida. But if you don't care, then yeah, you can just ignore. And the next one is if you meta player, for sure pull for Nahida. And also the next one is if you like the aesthetic and gameplay of Nahida, just because Nahida actually has a very beautiful burst and the gameplay is pretty kind of aesthetically good. So if you like, pull. The last one, if you're Archon collector, because she has Archon right, then pull for her. And now we've moved to the reason for you to know pull for Nahida. Actually not that much, just because she's quite good. But first one is that if you don't like the gameplay, you feel like I'm not really into kind of small child model or kind of not really like the gameplay, it's okay for you to skip, because Genshin Impact is not really kind of very hard that dependent on certain characters. So even without Nahida, you can clear the abyss even though. So you just should not worry if you don't like the gameplay or even the character itself. And second, if you kind of still prefer the classic reaction, like I know some of my viewers, even like players, even my friends, not really into Dendro, they still kind of like vaporize and melt and something like that. Sure, if you find like Dendro is not really your thing, you prefer the old one, then yeah, you should not pull for Nahida, because Nahida only good in any Dendro though. Now we move to the second character, which is the sim of the Dendro Archon itself, which is Nilou. So we talk the good about her is that first, she is the best character or team for Bloom reaction. Basically, she's just queen of Bloom reaction, just because the bountiful the core one just explode directly, and then it's also kind of stronger than just normal Dendro's hit, so that's why it's kind of insane. So she's the best one in terms of Bloom right now for the teams or even character consider. And second is that she's very good in any AoE type like that most of the case. Basically like current Spiral Abyss, if you would just talk about Spiral Abyss, basically she is just slaying AoE type, so very solid. And then third one, she's very easy to build and low investment. So if you kind of really like what type of character that only need a very low investment, you don't need even increase the talents, you only need level and you're fine. And the last one is lately Nilou become one of the best unit just to clear the Spiral Abyss, because we know that currently we are in the Sumeru. So if you kind of consider what type of like unit or character that can like finish faster in Spiral Abyss, then you can consider for Nilou, especially in AoE. But this one only Spiral Abyss matter though. And the cons or consider like things that bad for Nilou is the first, she is niche, and in terms of team building she is very restrictive. If you just compare like how Shenhe just only buffer for Cryo or Kujusari just buffer for Electro, but in terms of team variation, even Shenhe and Sarah have more variety in terms of team building, because Nilou is very restrictive. It's only literally only Bloom, not even Baizhu or High Bloom, it's only Bloom itself. And currently in Bloom team, not so much unit that we can have variations. Only probably Nahida, Dendro, MC, Shincho, Yalan, and Kokomi, and Yao Yao, potentially Baizhu. That's it. Yeah, you can go for Vapor, as some of people say that, but that's well, you need to invest though. But baseline, she's very niche and also very restrictive though. And second is that actually I already discussed, which is not flexible, and team variation is just a lot less. And the third one is in non or kind of spiral like stage like Spiral Abyss, where involving only boss, there's no kind of multi enemy, then she might struggle, just because Bloom usually very good in AoE situation where there's a lot of enemies. So if it's only kind of single enemy like that, it's kind of a little bit struggle for Nilou. But of course, if you have like investment, like you put the signature weapon, maybe have a couple of constellation, then yeah, I think you can kind of cooperate with that though. And the fourth one is that I think like in Nilou team right now, Nahida is kind of necessary to make like kind of work super like very good. Yeah, you can still use other like Kole stuff, something like that, but you can feel like a lot of different. So it feels same like kind of Sino stuff like that. So Nahida kind of necessary. And the consideration for you to pull for Nilou is the first, if you really like Bloom reaction or kind of fans or down to that with Bloom, then pull for Nilou. Just because Nilou is very good in Bloom reaction, are currently the best. And second is that if you need a team or kind of character that specialize in AoE type of enemy or kind of multiple enemy like that, then feel free to pull for Nilou. Just because naturally Bloom is very good in multiple enemy, especially if they kind of gather nearby and then the seed explode at once, then yeah, that's very good. It's very solid though. So maybe let's say you only have Yoimiya as your main DPS and Yoimiya only good at single target, then you need another counterpart that can cover the AoE, then yeah, you can consider to pull for Nilou. And the third one is that if you have Nahida and you think, what kind of character that can pair with Nahida very well, then yeah, you can consider Nilou as a one of it, just because Nahida will make Nilou just very good and they just work very well. And the last one, as usual, if you really like the character, if you like the gameplay, you find that Nilou is very aesthetic, your wife or whatever, feel free to pull for her though. And the reason for you to consider to skip for Nilou is that first, if you really need versatile character for Hydro unit, then you should consider to not pull for Nilou, just because Nilou is just very restrictive. If you kind of feel that usually Hydro is very versatile with any team, but it's not for Nilou. I mean, you can make Nilou in Vaporize, but in order for her to work that at least at the acceptable range, you need to kind of spend money a little bit to get the signature, get Constellation like C2, C5 if I'm not wrong. So just because of that, it's a little bit can be so costly compared to just like pull for, let's say, Ayato or kind of Yelan, something like that. Only you need at C0. They already work very good though in most of the Hydro team and something like that though. And the second is that if you really like to using and try different teams like variations, then I don't really suggest for you to pull for Nilou, just because currently at this stage Bloom team is not that much. It's basically, I would say, there's not much reaction. It's only limited in Bloom itself though, so it makes a little bit restrictive. So if you kind of try to experimenting with different teams, then Nilou is not really for you though, for me. And the third one is that if you struggle in the single boss and you really want to find what's the boss killer, then don't pull for Nilou, because Nilou in nature is just very good in AoE, but in boss not really that super good. It's okay, but not kinda the best one. So if you want the best one in single boss, just consider pulling Yoimiya or Futao, something like that. And the last one, if you don't like the character or the gameplay because you think maybe Nilou just very good, blah blah, but you don't like, just feel free to skip though, just because anyway, this is Genshin Impact anyway. You can have a lot of alternative. And the third character, which is Baizhu, and yeah, Baizhu haven't released yet, then unfortunately she is in the second wave, so if I release this video on second wave, Nahida and Nilou banners already end, so it's pretty much not relevant. So I have to release right now. So at the best, I can only see from the live stream, and a little bit I have to cross the land, take it some part from the beta information. So if you really don't like those kind of like beta stuff on whatever, just feel free to skip this entirely though. Okay, so now let's talk why I think Baizhu is a good unit though. So first, he is solid healer and provide a good resistant interruption, because some of character like Sino really need a resistant interruption, and that can make your rotation become smoother though. So you can heal and give resistant interruption in September. That's actually pretty good. That it's similar like Tautoma actually. And the second is that can be a Dendro driver, although it's not as good as Nahida, because Catalysts usually have advantage where you can become a driver to trigger certain reaction. Yeah, Baizhu can do that, as usually in kind of more into less enemy, single target, something like that. Then you can utilize Baizhu though. And the third point is that I think he will be good in spread or aggravate type of team, just because from what I see from like the attack animation, how the skill burst work, it looks like kind of more advantageous with the lesser enemy or kind of single target layer. So that's why spread and aggravate actually specialize better in lesser enemy compared to Bloom or Hyper Bloom, that more to the AoE. Last one, I think in terms of improve your confidence in Sino team, then Baizhu can potentially become the one, just because Yaoya is good for Sino also, but the difference is that Yaoya don't have any resistant interruption though, but Baizhu have though. So because of that, I think it will improve Sino team confidence, like rotation, something like that, so you feel like a lot more smoother. And the cons or the things that I feel like consider bad for Baizhu is the first, he has a slow Dendro application. I saw in the live stream his normal attack, skill and burst basically is just very slow, and the application is not that much. It just looks kind of not enough for certain team. I think in the aggravate spread is okay, just because usually those teams don't really rely on a lot of Dendro application. But something like bloom oriented, like Hyper Bloom Baizhu. I don't think Baizhu can provide enough application, so you need another Dendro. You need to cover with that though. And the second is the continuation where like he's not really good in AoE just because he's not really perform good in the Bloom or kind of AoE based reaction like Hyper Bloom, something like that, just because the Dendro application is not enough. So because of that, it's not really good in terms of AoE though. The third one and the next one is that the shield is actually pseudo shield. So basically it makes some people have a misunderstanding. If you kind of feel like this shield will be kind of like Diona or kind of Zhongli, it's not. It's the shield is actually very weak just because at least from until beta, the shield is actually weaker than Thoma, and we know that Thoma shield is not really that strong, so can easily break the shield and receive the damage. So because of that, the main gimmick is to give you resistant interruption though. But luckily he can heal, so it's a good thing at least. But don't kind of rely everything on his shield because his shield is basically very weak. And the last one is that Yaoyo basically can cover most of Baizhu role. The only thing that Yaoyo cannot cover is that the resistant interruption. Because of that, it makes Baizhu pulse values kind of goes down, just because we have like more accessible version, which is Yaoyo itself. And the reason for you to consider to pull Baizhu is that first, if you need a solid Dendro healer, then pull for him though, just because I think Baizhu can become a solid healer, at least around Yaoyo level, and Yaoyo is actually a very good healer in terms of Dendro though. So because of that, if you need a Dendro healer, feel free to pull for him, especially if you don't have Yaoyo. That's actually a massive win for you though. And the second is that if you need a resistant interruption, one like more smoother that didn't get any interrupted from your attack and whatever, then feel free to pull for Baizhu, because that's the main point from the Baizhu, to give you resistant interruption besides healing. Third one, if you really Sinoman then die hard and you really want to improve your gameplay to become smoother, then feel free to pull for Sino. But personally me, even though I as a Sinoman, yeah, I will try to give a little bit like couple pull for Baizhu, but if I didn't get for Baizhu, I feel still fine, just because I feel my rotation right now is fine for my Sino. And the last one is that if you really like the character or gameplay, because I know Baizhu is one of the long wait character also for some people, because he's already from like very early but never released. So if you really want him, then feel free to pull for him. And the consideration for you to skip or not pull Baizhu is that first, if you already have Yaoyo, especially C1 Yaoyo, I don't think Baizhu will give you a lot of upgrade or massive upgrade, especially if you are free to play or you're kind of very efficient or on your primo gem spending. I don't think it's a wise idea for you to go for Baizhu, just because I think the upgrade is just very minimal or even just around the same though. And then second is that if you feel the resistant interruption is unnecessary, then I don't think you should pull for Baizhu, because I think the Baizhu plus point compared to Yaoyo is that he provide the resistant interruption. But if you find that not important, feel free to skip though. And the next point is that if you need a solid support like off-field sub DPS or Dendro applicator, then don't pull for Baizhu. I already say that his Dendro applicator is very slow, attack skill burst is just very slow. Right now we have Nahida in the banner. Just pull for Nahida if you want the best applicator, not Baizhu though. And the last one, which is Ganyu. So the good about Ganyu is the first, she is solid kind of main DPS with off-field capability. So somehow she can become a little bit like sub DPS type of character, like off-field, utilize the burst. Then this is one of the selling point where it makes a little bit special compared to Ayaka, because Ayaka probably can be better in terms of main DPS, but Ganyu has this like kind of versatility, can like become a solid main DPS and also have like sub DPS kind of roles though. So that's why in here it makes Ganyu a little bit versatile in terms of like roles. And second, she's pretty convenient in terms of gameplay, just because you only need charge shot and just burst skill. Everything's very straightforward in her. The third, if you really like in the melt or freeze kind of reaction, then yeah, Ganyu is one of the best unit in melt and freeze though. Like recently I really like in melt. I find like using melt Ganyu is very satisfying. And the next one, Ganyu is savior for Dia. So if you want to make your Dia looks good and actually do something, then pair with Ganyu melt, just because Ganyu needs resistant interruption and like pyro application that constant and not to be have to be fast, and basically Dia can provide that. And the last one for my version, Ganyu is still a meta character. I know some of you don't agree anymore, but I will explain later in the bad part about Ganyu. And the cons or the considered things bad for Ganyu is the first, you need a shielder or at least you need resistant interruption. Just because when you do charge shot, you really need like not get interrupted at all. So the one at very comfy, of course, shield, but resistant interruption also welcome though. Because if you already charge and you get interrupted by enemy, you have to redo again, which is that's the most annoying part from like Ganyu things. Just because that's a main gimmick, and if you have to redo again, that's actually a huge DPS loss. And second is that not really friendly for mobile player, because I know aiming in mobile is harder than in the PC. So Ganyu is one character that bold and you need to aim. So if you kind of have hard time to aiming, especially in the mobile stuff, then yeah, I don't think it's very suitable for mobile player. The next one is that Ganyu freeze, or actually in general cryo lately, it's not really friendly in Spiral Blaze, not really favorable, just because they mix, like especially in the freeze team, like cannot be freeze, or the one that usually get advantage only the Andro team, something like that. So that's a little bit sad. In Ganyu melt, it's still okay, but and the last one, this is actually not bad about Ganyu, but this is towards more the bad sentiment about Ganyu. It makes people kind of avoid Ganyu though, because probably I believe most of content creators don't really like the gameplay style of Ganyu that's only charge shot and pretty much they say stiff, clunky, something like that. So because of that, it makes like Ganyu reputation in meta, it's kinda looks bad and feels like, oh, Ayaka is the one that meta and Ganyu is not meta. I think they're both about the same, but yeah, I have to agree. The gameplay of Ganyu is a little bit more stiff compared to Ayaka. Ayaka is more dynamic. And now we move to the reason for you to pull for Ganyu stuff. First, if you need a solid cryo unit, then pull for Ganyu because she is solid main DPS, and also you can utilize her as a burst spam. So if you feel like you need those kind of roles, then feel free to pull for Ganyu. Second, if you really like melt or freeze enjoyer, then pull for Ganyu because Ganyu is very good in melt and freeze kind of reaction. And third, if you really like the character and gameplay as usual, pull for her. Just because I know Ganyu is one of the popular character, like very waifuable. I know, like in Pixiv, a lot of fan art about Ganyu. So if you kind of really like her, very influenced with it, feel free to pull for her. In the end, it's Genshin Impact, right? One of the aspects is collecting the character. The next one is that if you need a meta character, then feel free to pull for Ganyu, because Ganyu is meta. I just say it's only like a little bit stiffer compared to Ayaka, that more dynamic. But if you're a mobile player, then don't pull, just because it will be harder for you to utilize Ganyu. So that's a little bit exception for mobile player. And the reason for you to skip Ganyu or not pull Ganyu is that first, if you're a mobile player or at least you have aim issue, then I don't suggest to pull for Ganyu though. Even for myself, sometimes I still have a hard time to aim certain enemy, and yeah, I understand if you have aim issue, and I don't think it's good for Ganyu though. And second is that if you don't like the character and gameplay as usual, don't feel too obligated to pull if you don't really like the character itself. And the last one, if you don't have shielder or dodge skill, I don't suggest for you to pull for Ganyu, just because when you perform charge shot, you really need to not get interrupted, or when you don't use shield, then when you perform a charge shot, you really know how to dodge, like, because if not, when you receive the damage, Ganyu can die pretty fast because Ganyu is pretty squishy. So it's either you have shielder or dodge kill. And now about like weapon or constellation section. So first one, I will start with Nahida. So basically, if you ask me which one that you should pull, Nahida early constellation like C2 or the weapon, I already make a kinda in the guide one if you want to see the complete one, but this one only the very brief. In short, that I would also say Nahida C2 is give you more a benefit compared to the weapon, and I think the weapon is still better than C1 because I think the C1 is a little bit kinda okay, but it's kinda not really good in practical. So for the Nilou, early constellation of weapon, for me, the signature weapon of Nilou, the key of Kachinisu, is basically very give a good buff for Nilou, which is I find it's actually very important, that give a huge buff compared to other like even 5-star weapon like Jade Cutter, not even like close to the signature weapon of Nilou itself. So that's why I feel like weapon of Nilou is the first priority, then second constellation is the second one, and the last one that less important is C1. So for the Baizhu, is it early constellation or weapon? So for me, I have mixed reaction in here, but I still prefer C2 just because actually the weapon is good, but the prototype ember can give a similar effect, which what I think that Prototype Ember is the light version of the signature weapon. So because of that, I think probably going for C2 is better to get more application. As for Ganyu, Constellation or weapon, actually I prefer for the weapon for Ganyu, which is the Amos bow. But take notes that Amos bow you can pretty much get on standard banner, or even when you pull like weapon banner or and you lose 50-50, you can get Amos bow. So because of that, it's kind of like depends on you. If you just care about damage, then go for the weapon. But if you think about like long term or value, then I think going for C1 is better than after that weapon. And finally, if you ask me which one should you pull or in 2.6, if I have to choose one, my final verdict I will go for sure is Nahida, just because I feel Nahida is one of the best character right now. Like especially kind of in the Dendro reaction thingy, she's basically the best one. The 3 karma is insane. She can buff the elemental mastery, very versatile character, and I would to even confident say that she is on par with Kazuha. That makes her as one of the best unit that I think in term of the long term very good though to clear in most of endgame content or difficult stuff though. And pretty much that's it for Wushu Pool Edition in 3.6. And I hope the best of luck in your pool. I hope you get a lot of 5-star in there. And yeah, if you like, feel free to hit super button and like. And that will be very appreciated for me and the fans. And I will see you next time. Bye bye.